It's a real pleasure to speak with Raphael Rinaldi, who's he has a master's degree in sports physical therapy from the University of Melbourne in Australia. Raf has worked with athletes all over the world. In France, he's currently working at the National Orthopedic Hospital in London, and he has vast experience helping athletes and patients deal with the physical and the psychological aspects of injury recovery. And he also has significant expertise in pain management. Thanks for taking the time to speak with me today, Raf.
Thank you, Les. Always a pleasure. Just thank you for inviting me here today.
Yeah. Maybe you can talk just a little bit about your background and your training.
All right. So I was born in Italy, and I completed an undergraduate degree in physiotherapy in Italy in 1995 before starting to become involved in working in sports after probably 2 or 3 years of rotational work at the hospital. And I've done some postgraduate education at the University of Nice in 1997, and before progressing and completing a master, as you said, at the University of Melbourne in Australia in sport physiotherapy. And since then, I returned to Europe, but at the same time, after completing registration in Australia, I've been working with Australia national squad, and before becoming involved with the British national teams since 2008 to 2009. Then since 2008, I've been lecturing in applied methodology in sport rehabilitation and return to sport at the postgraduate master in sport physiotherapy at the University of Sienna in Italy. And since then, I've been the guest lecturer for the module. Since 2014, I've been an accredited international sport physical therapist. The accreditation follows the pathway of specialization, follow the guidelines of the WCPT, which is the World Conference of Physical Therapy, is the main governing body basically for all physical therapists in the world. And more recently, I started to become a mentor at the University of Melbourne, and also for other physiotherapy colleagues here in UK. So I'm currently, again, just to work at the Royal National Orthopedic Hospital, which is obviously is a center of excellence in orthopedic and musculoskeletal disorders in North London.
Maybe you can talk, Raf, about some of your current work at the National Orthopedic Hospital in London.
Yes, so besides my sport background, always being interested in applying complex cases when it comes to chronic pain or persistent pain, as we call it today, and the influence of biosocial issues, I would say, in complex cases. So my role involves mainly the management of individuals with persistent pain in which I, besides the physical, so I would say, exercise programs that I do with them, I just empower them to have a successful or effective coping strategies and understanding the different facets of pain or hypersensitivity to pain and limited mobility of so we say functional ability to interact with the world. And so that's one of the things that has been fascinating me, and most of the time it's just to learn by the day.
Yeah. So I'm sure, of course, chronic or persistent pain is quite debilitating for patients, for athletes. And you mentioned trying to help them develop some strategies or to, you know, address their sensitivity to the pain. Maybe you can
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about some of the
Okay,
strategies.
so what we learn, probably what I learned after coming back with patients that only you can see in an orthopedic setting, so patients with basically osteogenetic imperfection, with some chronic pain, with some pure pathology, then you realize that the difference between an athlete, or actually a high performance athlete, and a patient is not that different. Why? Because I've never seen a high performance athlete to be absolutely pathology or trauma free or injury free.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pack and parcel this time that every athlete, high performance athlete, because of the amount of the training load and the athletic age and the normal age and the predisposition to push really on the limit, is basically everybody has some niggles, there are some issues, there are some recurrent, shall we say, conditions that requires particular attention and or requires a specific strategy. So what I feel that is the application of those principles to the different type of patients. So and that's why I learned to work with patients that, for instance, they don't have an athletic background or physical exercise background. And so for them, for instance, much harder to deal with the physical aspects, but also with the psychological aspect of alternating good days and bad days, okay? Compared to athletes. So I would say that they know that they have to, they are prepared to go through the daily, so we say, pain or effort dosage, you know, just to say to excel for competition when it comes to competition time.
Right.
So what I can say is basically, in terms of the strategies, if you have to initiate the so we say the discussion, I think that if we just are going to share the white screen now, I was just thinking about. So if you just clear all the drawing now. So one of the key points of the discussion was, okay, what is the main challenges for injury recovery? All right, I think it's the same. I think there are 3 steps. One is that you travel with life, right? So that's life. Basically, you travel very well, and all of a sudden, you got injury. So you just drop down.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're here, right? So all of a sudden, what happens? So if I need to put some text into it, I would say that it suddenly, so what the main problem with injury is just it suddenly happens, okay? So, or suddenly, so we say, interrupts a rewarding plan, okay? So if you just say, what do you mean? Well, all of a sudden, what I mean is that you are here, you're really, really working well, you're satisfied with your life, you're rewarding, you're traveling well, you work so hard, forget at some point, and then you just suddenly drops everything. All right?
But
it's not a physical, yeah.
Would you say, Raf, we were talking earlier about persistent pain, and so I wonder if there's that sudden kind of interruption with persistent pain, or
with persistent pain. Yeah, with the persistent pain, what happened? The process is a little bit different, but it's similar. It means as I try to still to draw it. So what happens? That you're there, and you have an initial bow, initial bow, initial bow, initial bow. So you just continue to go back down, up and down. All right. So it takes for an athlete to say that, okay, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. It takes longer to get back and then bounce back.
Right.
Okay. And
so
this is
slope you still kind of have that downward slope. It's just maybe not quite so precipitous.
Yeah, it's not. What happened is that creates a stressful situation where you have a different bouts or the flare-ups, how you want to call it, compared to just a normal person. And actually it does affect mental health, the physical health, the level of performance, and it takes sometimes longer to recover. That depends on the number of factors.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, so we say suddenly interrupts a rewarding plan, or you can say it just, if you may have to say, it just interrupts the plan,
Right.
interrupts your life, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on which occurrence.
Right.
Then the second thing that we can say about persistent pain, that since it's recurrent, in order just to get it right, yeah, every time, you need just to have a plan. But that's because of the, this is the second thing that we can discuss today. So you say, okay, it happens. So point number 2, it takes time and hard work, or a strategy, I'll say, a strategy to just to get back to the same level of a pre-flare-up level, right?
Right.
So that's the second thing that you can, I know, I'll state the obvious here, but the strategy, we call it, we can to be as dynamic strategy, multifaceted strategy. What I mean with that, that's why I made this particular graphs in which sometimes you recover quickly, you don't know why. Sometimes you recover faster and you don't know why, right? So you know, well, or you think you know, right? So and then the stress is, and that leads to the other thing, to the other aspect of what we discussed before, which is okay, what's next? Number 3, it rarely, when it comes to challenge injury or recovery after injury, it rarely, if never, goes as planned.
Yeah.
All right. So the key thing here, and that's why I come back with the dynamic strategy concept. It's just because there are so many factors that are affecting the successful recovery, that the strategy of the plan needs to be dynamic.
Right.
We have to add one more thing since we're here. Why not? So basically, the main thing is the focus is loss of control, and loss control generates fear, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I say. You have the fear, and actually raise alertness. All right. So, and as a result, this is one of the key things, is that it's not the focus, basically the onus, shall we say, probably is better. Onus is a loss of control.
Right.
So without obviously being, from my perspective, what I learned over time is that, is the loss of control is the aspect to address first,
Right.
or one of the priority when it comes to injury rehabilitation, and address that with the patient, with the athlete.
Yeah.
And how to address the fear of feeling not in control anymore, especially, for instance, with recurrent pain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe you can keep each of these points up on the screen, because I want to touch on them in a bit more detail.
Sure.
So going back to the second point about the dynamic or multifaceted nature of injury and the strategies that you use, is that the case for both the management of persistent pain and injury versus acute injury?
No, I think it's a little bit different. All right. So if you have a situation where, shall we say, you have so you can have a situation where, yes, if you have a one-off injury, even just a catastrophic injury, I think creates a similar but slightly different scenario, because when you have let's say, even just a catastrophic or just a severe injury, the key thing usually is the loss of control degenerates or loss of control, still the same.
Right.
The difference that is the sudden onset creates basically, well, loss of control immediately creates a reaction, which is don't know where to go, don't know how to start. You don't have basically no tools. You haven't been able to experience that before. It's a first experience, right? That's why I put it on here in terms of if I need to write a baseline there, basically you have this baseline here. So you have a drop where you say, okay, what's happening here at this point? Is no tools for self-management, sudden onset, nowhere to start. And the big question is, because it's new, the key thing is, will I be able to basically to get where to the pre-injury level? All right, so where I'll be able to be there and say, and from here, from where I am or to where I'm going, if I have to say, what is the view? Is this way? It goes up and down. It's going to be up. It goes down. No idea, right? So actually, they create a loss control, a number reaction from the athlete that in which then creates this situation needs to be addressed first, I would say. Okay, so that's where we start. So we need to know, as a result, in terms of strategy, is probably, if I have to, this what happens. So field tools is, I would suggest probably three things, like everything in life, is face reality, or know the reality, or face reality. So what happened?
Right.
Okay, so what happened is that, fair enough, was a trauma or something that you overlooked, or something that beyond your control, or something that you ignore and at some point happened. Just to face reality. Okay, I think is the first thing. Is just and more specifically is what happened and what it is. Okay, so what it is. Okay, so you start with, call it, I want to call the clinical picture. So something called diagnosis, something just like clinical picture or diagnosis of the pathology, exactly what happens. All right. So we need to know, first of all, what happened. Second point. So if I say, if I need to move it, sorry, just there. This is there. So number two, if it's okay, is now starting point. What needs to be done? So where we're going? Sorry, where are we going? Second point is have the end in mind. The end in mind. If I need to cite, to quote someone very famous in terms of self-management, okay, have the end in mind. Okay, so having in mind is establish where you are and establish where you're going. So actually is basically that the point, let's say there. All right, that's where we're on the end up. That is the L, the end of mind. And the third point, if I may, is now is to, okay, what kind of process, what needs to be done to get there. Right, simple as that. I know it's very simple, but I try to have it simplified. Yeah. Now, I hope it makes sense. So
sure. So it's really about a path and what are the steps to get to that.
Exactly. But that's a key mind, because sometimes what happens, most of the time, one of the common mistakes I've done in the past, that people tend to overemphasize. It's not that these three things are one more important than the others. as equally as important the others. All right.
Why?
So
Why are they
yeah,
equally important?
right. So if you need to build a pyramid, basically, you put basically what needs to be done. He wants to get that the end of mind. No, really, that's the end of mind. Probably is the basis. Then you just like, sorry, just to go back to an inverted pyramid if I need to. So in which you have probably 1, 2, 3, right? So that's number 3. What needs to be done to get there? That's number 2. That's number 1. It's the podium model.
Yeah, yeah.
I know I just made it up a bit, but face reality is easy because you just go diagnosis, go pathology, go imaging. I go a break. I can't walk. It's very clear. You face reality. You can't walk. You can run. You have pain. You got trouble. You're weak. Whatever. Right?
Yeah.
You can't function. Number 2 is once I want to get there. Right. I know I have to get back to competition. You be able to train in a way, and that's a stepping stone. That's the harder bit because nobody knows that go from where you are, which is unique, everybody is unique, or where you are, that probably sometimes you have a fairer idea, and nobody knows exactly the points that needs to be done. Yes, you have the clinical milestones, all right, and that's where we enter in terms of what we call the clinical milestones. I give you an example, all right? So you go. So what I mean is that this line here is a myth, right? So the real myth of physio or rehabilitation is this. That's normal, right? That's reality,
Right.
all right? So I think it's more important to talk about first to instill, and then we come back to the other point of expectations about recovery. Basically, to create in the athlete the peace of mind by not to scaring him, but to give you reality. So that's what I'm talking about. Face reality about what happened, but also face reality about what needs to be done together. And that's the reality.
Right.
Right? So the reality is as be prepared that going linearly perfect does not exist, will not exist, is not happening. So, and that's basically then leads to the other aspect that probably we're gonna introduce now, inevitably.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think? How does it sound so far?
Yeah. So you touch on many great points, and I guess to go back to your analogy of the pyramid, that you can't really have the top of the pyramid if you don't have the structures underneath it or the foundation. And so it sounds like you're suggesting that there's some sequence, or that athletes have to have certain foundations built upon the other in order to get back to the top of the pyramid or their end in mind goal. I also, in terms of that issue of time, I guess I wonder, is it more straightforward, or is it clear in terms of what the timeframes are in the case of acute injury versus persistent or chronic injury?
Okay, so in terms of what happens is that the difference is that when you have a one-off injury, then you have a gradual, but at some point you'll be able to resume some activity, and at some point there will be some level of variations when you reach the level. All right. So if you have, for instance, you have a fracture, or if you have a traumatic injury, or big illnesses, it will take some time, I would say, but then you'll be able to reach a certain level of performance, and then you're able to juggle the level of training or performance once you go there. What that's a different situation. So what you have a rapid, in this situation, is basically not persistent pain, or just basically payment situation, basically is the timeline. You're there, you're up there, and then you can manage whatever is left of. You need to adapt about the long-lasting effects of that particular injury once you're at the very top. But the progression is reasonably quick, okay, or rapid in terms of progression is the closest you get to the level of performance or pre-injury performance, then probably start to. That's why I put the peak here, because most of the time you have a setback.
Right.
All right. So I give an example. Just what I mean is that from here you start walking, right? And then from there you're jogging. So we say, well, that was jogging, right? But then what we have to hear is when you start, well, jumping for 3 hours. Now we have a situation where, as I say, starting it just to be something that we are more equipped genetically to less equipped genetically, and also mentally prepared. So I start to get, and then you have a non-persistent timeline, which the closer you got to the level of, I would say, performance, basically pre-injury performance, right?
So I like how earlier, Raf, you mentioned that this idea that, this line is linear or the progression is a linear one is a myth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And is that something that the athlete understands at the start of their recovery, or is that something you talk about and discuss
No,
and educate
well,
them?
usually the athletes are modestly positive. That's usually what the athletes are telling me most of the time when I ask him to draw. Sometimes I begin asking to draw. Usually they do this. Yeah. Say, yes, I'm gonna have bad days here, but I'll be fine.
So
Once I'm back to training, I'm good, right?
you get
And
them
then
to
realize,
draw it. You get them to
yeah,
do that?
yes. I
Yeah.
start to ask him, say, okay, how long you want to take? Okay, as quick as possible. All right, okay, but if we just make an estimate, all right, that's X, Y, and Z, it will take, let's say, 8 weeks. All right, so you have 8 weeks here. Say how much. And then what happened is that I start to just to give a draw and say, look, we need to go there, and then we go up, there, and then you go back down and up, and say there, you go back up, down, down, up. I say, what do you mean? All right, yeah. So just explain that we need the time to heal the here, so we can push it. You have become super fit here, but we are not allow healing. From here, we go up because you have to build up strength, for instance, but it takes 8 to 8 weeks, the basic strength. But then after basic strength, you're going to drop a little bit because we start to introduce something new that you're not used to. And it's going to hurt a little bit. And then you get back, and then you start to get up to generate some power. And then from here, you start to get used to training in the field, on the pitch. And then it will be hard because the sessions become closer to a normal player.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. So you start to discuss what the language is. Then they start to accept it.
Right.
So what I mean is that if you start to do, basically, if you start to do something like, you say, well, it's going to be like that, and say, what do you mean? Well, you need to explain to me. So you need to basically relate the setbacks to their normal life or the normal living, or their normal life as an athlete. So you have to speak the language. That's obviously, we open another door here, but basically one of the expectations of the athlete, absolutely crucial to establish at the very beginning. It's just because if you think about what we discussed before, the fear is from loss of control, and the fear from the uncertainty from you don't know what's going on or what's going to happen. Right. So if you just establish or address or decrease the fear, which is the fear is of something we don't know, right? If it's something that you can know or expect or told without instilling further fear, obviously, then you become aware of what is going to happen.
Right.
Then
So,
you can equip yourself and go back to the plan.
right. So kind of that adage that knowledge is power. And in this case, it sounds like when they have the information and understanding, that
Yeah,
that then reduces the uncertainty. And as you say, it's the
yeah,
uncertainty that drives the fear. So when you reduce the
yeah.
uncertainty, you kind of calm them.
That's it.
I love, Raf, how you kind of draw this out. And I think there's such value in that, or I would imagine there is, because, when you were describing it, you said there's sort of this aha, like a moment, right? Where kind of the light goes on.
Yeah,
Is that the case when you're kind of drawing it out and you walk them through and you say, well, here you're going to have recovery and here you need rest because of this. And you sort of walk them through the different
yeah.
elements of healing and recovery. Does that then sort of influence how they're thinking or approaching?
Absolutely. Sometimes you just have to go back and just to try to speak the language for different reasons. First, I just learned that no matter what you tell to a patient, he's in pain and he's worried or he's in fear.
Yeah.
An athlete who is in fear because there's no control on what's going on is very emotional. So
Right.
the first thing is just to depress the emotion down. Just basically because emotion creates alertness. So if I alert, I just have to act. I don't have to think about a reason to perform a strategy. So I need to just calm that down, remove as soon as possible the emotional component, and then you can plan. If
Right.
someone is in constant state of fear or lost control, it doesn't listen to you. So the only way that I start to say to listen to me is to show visually what I'm talking about.
Right.
Because also that comes back to communication. When you talk to an injured athlete, the first thing is give visual, 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 visual. Or just if it is a patient, is most of the time, most of our athletes are visual. If not, you can talk, but usually very rarely what they listen is what they want to be reassured. So,
Right.
all right, so I give you basically no verbal cues and information of what they're talking about.
Mhm.
So that's why I start to develop some aspect in which I just draw these particular graphs, and also because basically I tend to tell them, for instance, okay, you tell me um, when you're training, when you become stronger, when so just basically this is a graph of your training, right?
Yeah.
So this is the beginning of the training, right? So just give me a second, right? So this is the beginning of the training. So you're nice and fresh. And for instance, that is the absolutely end of the session. You're absolutely shattered, no more to give. Right. So when you feel that your body is improving, when you get stronger, and basically that's all I have to know, because if the athlete tells me that is getting stronger at the end of a session, I would say, yeah, I'm stronger here. And I say, no, you're stronger when you're recovering, when you're eating, when you're sleeping, when you're chilling, when you just give it time to body to recover.
Right.
So you get stronger, as you can see from this graph, you get stronger when you do basically, similarly, you're not doing nothing at home. It's here. It's here. Is night, is quiet status, is peace of mind, is night, is nourishing the body, nourishing the mind, nourishing the soul, right? So, and he said, oh, what do you mean? He said, yeah, it's not the how much you push, but how better you recover from the push. Push
Mhm.
is easy. Everybody can push. But we know that actually, so that's the recovery. And we're talking about the steady state. So
Yeah.
what do you mean about the steady state? Yeah, we're talking about, and then I go back, sorry, just go back to here. We just start to, again, all right? As a back, okay, so what we're gonna do is, just because we know that this, it will take time all right? And time, in order for you to recover, we need to sort out this. Not sort out the training. Training is easy. We push hard or push the limit. You puke on the gym, it's fine. No problem. Is the steady state? Is the state of mind? Is eating well, sleeping well, feeling that you do the right thing?
Yeah.
Because you're not training 24 hours a day. Right. I want you to do quality training for maybe 4 hours a day, maybe 3 hours a day. It's the 12 hours in between that matters. So you go up, and this comes back to the fact that you have peace of mind.
So it sounds like you're spending at least some of your time talking to and educating the athlete about the importance of rest and recovery, whereas their mindset is primarily on the pushing the physical aspects of their recovery. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, because actually, sorry, just to get back into clarify here, even just like this, I know this is very simple, but I would say, look, because also, I spent a lot of time in recovery because pushing is easy. So training hard is easy. If we try training hard, it's going to create some failure, but because also patients, they produce pain and produce. So when you're here, as I said before, when you're training in your day, right? So that's the hardest part. That you need to basically, as I said before, you need to get ready when you're down. When you're exhausted mentally, you're exhausted physically, everything hurts, you got pain, even just for something that you're not used to. So let's start from here. You go for walking, you're even able to walk. So the stress is happening at the very end of a session. So this is the challenge from a mental perspective, where I have to consolidate my efforts. Yeah. Before, then you just consolidate your efforts or direct the efforts during, give it all you can during training.
Right.
That's the second. I'm not saying that, but this is the key part. Yeah. Because that's the part in which the athlete is alone, he's at home, he's by himself, everything is hurt, and you know what I say, I feel hopeless because again, because he's by himself, everything hurts. Yeah. And doesn't know is all right, is not right. And actually, if you don't inform them what to expect, there's a risk that you lose confidence.
Right.
Oh, yeah. All right. So the other thing,
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was thinking about this aspect because also let's come back. That's why I left the graph on top here. Because the other question is, before I write down this one, I say, okay, because you're an elite athlete, you think you're going to recover quicker or slower compared to a normal person. And when when the athlete tells me, oh, it's going to be quicker because I'm fitter, and I say, yes, your physiology or metabolism is better, or you've got mental resilience. But what happens is that the vast majority of people stops here. This is what you have to do, basically, and that's what we're talking about, let's say 6 weeks. That's 12 weeks, that's 18 weeks, right? So you got much more steps to do to get to a level, to be able to train, to resume training, then to compete, and then to stay fit when you compete, right? So the amount of steps probably is threefold all normal person. Right. Barely someone is jogging, right? So the physiology is the same. The difference, it takes much more time. And because it takes much more time, the risk is that if you don't have a strategy or have a clear understanding what's happening in your body, I don't want you to crash down mentally. So actually, we can't go through the extra steps together.
Sure. So because the athlete is trying to do more and perform at a much higher level than the average person, they need to understand that there's also more required in terms of their recovery. Is that right?
Okay. Exactly. So it takes longer to recover because the level of performance is much higher.
Right.
Okay. So even just you have a relatively time to rest. Just like after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we know the effects of even temporary, just the effect of forced immobilization on the conditioning. So the condition is going to happen.
Yeah.
But also all the different aspect of be able for your mental aspect to get used to again to the training load.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about the physical resilience, it's about the mental resilience. So and this what I know is a bit messy, basically the zigzagging up and down, but it tells me that is the mental resilience is important. All right. So the strategy is to bounce back when the chips are down, when you're really exhausted.
Right.
And that's it creates the strategy, to cope with that, and just expect that to be stretched over a long period of time.
Right. I want to come back to that point about, how athletes cope and kind of work through those points when you mentioned maybe where they're at the end of a training session and they're really tired or stressed. And as you mentioned, how they respond to that is important for their upward trajectory.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about here. So basically the key thing is on that aspect is about planning, right? So what do you mean about planning? I say, well, the first thing is to plan. It's easy. It's just to plan basically the training load, and it's easy just the training load, the training program. But probably the first thing you think about for mental resilience is to have a bad day plan. This is very common to chronic pain management, right? What's the bad pain plan? Is the bad day plan is the plan where nothing goes right, you can't finish the session, you can barely move, or you have to skip the session because you are in this situation here, in which you're not recovering, you're still flat, shall we say. So it takes longer, you're here, you're not going up. And this is the area in which the bad plan comes in. And that creates the resilience. So create resilience means that I'm able to bounce back from the particular type of load that I had, physical, mental, especially mental or physical, and actually I'm not able to have a bedtime plan. Right. So, all right. So let's talk about these strategies in which the bedtime plan is something that it just creates a recovery. And let's see if I find anything, but it creates plenty of time for the give space to all the different systems to create the nourishing state. Okay, what the traditional medicine say, there's a nourishing the body, nourishing the soul, and nourishing the mind.
Right.
So you create a bedtime plan in which we call a flare-up plan, someone is calling it. Okay, so I think the concept is pretty clear. And then then you can, go ahead.
Oh yeah, so just to clarify, the idea is you're helping build the athlete's mental resilience by creating plans and having discussions about how they're going to handle those times where they're at the low end of that, where there's the dips, kind of where they're in the valley, I guess, as opposed to the peak. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. And go ahead.
Go ahead.
That's all right. So, and then can you see still the graph? So that's the idea, is that as I go through, so what we can do, sometimes, let's say that we can discuss different strategies. Okay, so for instance, give me a second where we are now. The bad plan means, I give you an example, all right? So let's try it again as a plan to say, what do you mean? I think it's very important to give something that gives back confidence or just a feeling control, all right? I give you just very simple example, right? So you have AM, PM, and evening time. Okay. So just sorry, just to undo these ones. Right, so just erase everything. Right, so let's say that we create a little bit of a plan very quickly. I think is what basically you can work on. It's just something that you work on mind, emotion, or actually emotion before the mind and body. Right, I give you an example what I mean. It's just like for a bad day, you have your wake up routine, for instance. All right, so I say, what do you mean wake up routine? Let's get what your wake up routine. So you put your best music on, you put the best breakfast on, you put your best lovely shower, okay, and then you just put your own basically body recovery you want to do, just basically a massage or just a walk in a park or just to stay in bed and watch a movie. It doesn't matter. Well, I'd like to have your wake up routine. So just to wake up and just get ready for your morning, okay? So that in the morning, for instance, you start to do your own, for instance, it's just a mini rehab program. We can give you a very bad day, or we call it the low intensity program, in which basically is able to be success. The idea is to create success. You're able to do that, and what you focus on there is to be able to do success and also become aware of effort. Okay, there's another concept, effort levels. All right, there's another concept that I work at some point with all athletes. Why is effort and is not pain? Right, because when because rehab is a form of modified training. Okay, so what I like is to discuss with them is it's not about pain level. Pain level is very clinical, right? It's not via scale or pain. Just show me, tell me about effort, okay? Simply because I want to speak. I just speak to an athlete as an athlete, right? I say, what do you mean? Well, when you're on the track and you do you're healthy and you're training, it's not the coach to say how much pain you have. They say, he asks you how you're feeling, right? So you say, okay, great time, right? This is really busted. Just as the first set, you done very well. I say, how you doing? Have you got anything in the tank more for one more? I say, okay, and it doesn't ask you about pain because pain is given. It's hurts you. You plenty of lactate. But what the athlete expected to coach to ask him, say, how you feeling? What happens in the tank? Are you still going or not going? So I like to treat my athlete with effort level, right, or even just my patient, because effort focus on what you can do.
Right.
If you're pain, you're not really able to control effectively the pain, but you can control the level of effort.
Right. So when you kind of shift the focus of rehabilitation and conceive of it as modified training, then it helps kind of shift the focus from away from pain and onto this issue of how much effort they're putting in. Because as you say, during their usual sort of training, it's not like the coach is asking, are you in pain? That's just assumed to be part and parcel of the training experience.
Exactly.
It's about how much effort are you putting in?
Yeah, how hard it is, and it's hard is because of the pain is given, fine, or is it hard because you got fatigue, and there's two different things.
So how do you know?
Mental fatigue,
So I'm just curious, though, Raf, how do you know, like based on their indication of effort, what information does that then give you in terms of whether the athlete should be pushing through more, whether they should back off?
Exactly. Because if a patient, what it tells me now, because then what you do is then through effort, if you have to check basically now effort, I need to get a RP scale then at some point, but what is telling me, just I try to add here so it's just easy. So effort focus on intent. So it means that patient now is involved, or the athlete is involved himself, but is in power, in control, in power to determine, right? So because the effort, if someone's telling me low effort, what is telling me is not pushing enough. And now there are two situations.
Right.
If it's not pushing enough, is on purpose or not on purpose, right?
What though?
I explained to you, right? So if it's on purpose, fantastic, because that's what was the session was about. It's about regeneration, low effort, just let your body flowing, nice and easy. Just enjoy what you're doing, because, for instance, enjoy walking is absolutely low effort now, because something you were struggling last week, and I want you to dwelling into the positive experience of low effort walking to reinstate the message to your mind, to your body, to your soul, that now walking is no longer the edge. Okay, so, and now we can just start to getting into, that's good, just getting into the aspect. I can clear now. Right, so if I may, right, so you have a situation when you have RPE, okay? RPE is telling me that if I go low, if I stay low,
Rate of perceived exertion, right?
Yeah, RPE, yeah, perceived exertion. So if I'm low, okay, I give a lot of love to regeneration. Regeneration for your body, for your soul, re-energizing. It tells your body or your soul, or even just the mind, increase the alertness in the body by the fact that you do something that was perceived as challenging before, and you challenge it. On the other hand, when is supposed to be high, okay, you're supposed to be in quite basically challenge. You have to make an effort, you have to find things challenging. So what happens is that low creates as I say, I want to call probably creates modulation. Is a central modulation of inhibition on inhibitory response. So what I mean is that inhibitory means that is a mental inhibition, is a physical inhibition, is a immune, is a subconscious inhibition, right? So basically, you create a modulation in which empowering ability to do it. Whereas basically here, certain situation is what is telling me here at the high level. So we're talking about the medium high level, conditioning. Basically from it creates a conditioning stimulus. I rechange it. Stimulus creates adaptation. So what it's telling me is that if the patient is making an effort, all right, is around here. If a patient is here, is creating an adaptation. All right.
Right.
Is not giving love and care. Is not in the low area. Is create a stimulus. And the
Right.
stimulus is physical, is mental, is emotional, right? So as a result, it's important he has to give a bit of a stress to the system, general, in order to create an adaptation.
Sure. But what happens though, let's say the intent of the session, maybe you come in and you want to work on something very specific in that rehab session for a particular day.
Yeah,
And it's designed to be an activity that really should require low effort. So you mentioned walking earlier.
yeah,
What happens in the instance when it's a low effort activity and yet the athlete is still experiencing pain?
yeah.
How is that situation handled? And I guess my question would be, well, is pain disregarded in that instance? Because it sounded like earlier the suggestion was the focus should be on effort, not so much pain.
Yeah. So what happened is that usually when you have pain, is something that you would expect as an experience, or to say better. When you got pain here, basically is expected, because what happens is that the inhibition response, or we call it pain response, happens even just at low intensity. Okay, but this is basically is a typical, just explain to the patient that it's going to happen. Why? Because now the body is getting fitter, but his only response he used to for over extended period of time, his only response was about pain, pain, pain. He could not discriminate between the different between the level of different effort. So there's a bit of a battle between what you're giving him, that you perceive the effort is being low, and the response of the system. So I would say it's not the body, just the system that tells you that gives you pain.
Mm-hmm.
But the pain is the response that is happening. So the more you experience the nourishing values, I would say, or the low intensity, the less pain response is gonna happen.
Right.
It won't be eliminated. This is the other thing, is I don't expect everything to go away completely. But over time, you suppress this response, is something outside your control. That's
Right.
what I say, if I over focus on pain, you over focus on something that you don't have control,
Right.
right?
So on some level, that pain you're suggesting is a normal response to the body's adaptation
Yeah,
to different stimuli or to the
yeah.
introduction of different
Also
stimuli.
because pain can come over for a number of reasons that are outside our control.
Right.
Immune system, emotional system, subconscious, yeah, just like psychological, right? So
Sure.
something
Sure.
that is so multi-layered. So when it comes, what happens is you keep nourishing with the positive feedback of doing activity that empowering it, forcing. So we say the internal software, which is embedded in this pain virus, all right?
Yes.
And you give an external stimuli, and you force it just to become aware that the low activity is creates some positive response.
Right.
Okay,
You
so
keep.
I know it's a little bit of love. It's not everything love. It's basically pain and love. But what happens is sometimes you just have to give it. Why asking to do for extended period of time?
Mhm.
Because our system is so multi-layered that it takes time to take every single layer or every deconnection in the network, because of millions of neurons interconnected between themselves and between neuroproteins or immune systems. So I stop there. I tell you, basically, it's normal
Yeah.
to expect that. So if you over focus on pain, you reinforce psychologically, but also neurally, the concept that pain is there, it will be there forever. Which basically effort is a focus on ability.
Right.
All right.
So it's not to entirely disregard a focus on pain, but you seem to be suggesting that if that's the primary focus, that
Yeah.
doesn't serve the patient well, and that there's
Yeah.
value in
Yeah.
shifting the emphasis more to effort, which is not always thought
Fair enough.
of. in a
Exactly.
rehab setting.
That's the first thing. Second point, it's just like even just to talk to a person, and this person is an athlete. So if you talk about patient to an athlete, and he's an athlete, I want to talk about an effort and say, how was it? Yeah, you got something left in the tank, you can give him more, you're completely done, you're exhausted, go one more, you can do 3. We stay on the same level, same pace, less pace, more weight, less weight. That's the effort. That's what he loves to hear, because he treats himself, he identifies himself, I'm an athlete again.
Yeah.
I'm not a patient anymore, right? And that is crucial about self-awareness. That's the other thing.
Right.
If I need to get from a language perspective. Okay?
So is that important that the athlete sort of maintain some self-identification as an athlete during their recovery, or is that possible to do?
I think it's important all the time, because it's level of identity, which is produced a sudden loss or a gradual loss due to recurrent injuries, undermines where he's at in his phase of his life. Right? So until he's an athlete, even just like you can be obviously an athlete all your life, even just you're a recreational athlete. So that's why you're asking a specific type of service with me, because I love to get back to sport instead of being a return back to life, which is fine. Right. So I treat him as an athlete. I speak to him as an athlete, which is shifting to a clinical discourse when it's needed, but mainly just a busy treat as an athlete. So, and it's absolutely crucial for him to see himself that he's still able or identify as an athlete, not as a normal person anymore, because that was a conscious choice that at some point he did in his life to become an athlete. There was a choice, and you have to respect that. That's the point.
One of the things I noticed when you were talking earlier about your communication with the athlete, it sounds like you ask them questions to solicit their understanding or to get a better sense of their expectations. Is that correct?
Well, absolutely. As I love Socrates, so and Platonis, so actually is that kind of I would say dialogue in which is crucial to understand the perspective of the athlete, of the injured athlete. All right, so to know them, to know how they react and or how they see themselves, what their perspective, and then I start to use their perspective to convey the message. There's no point of forcing my message into a patient, because actually if an athlete will understand you, but it doesn't buy it. Right? So yeah, so simple as that. So in terms when it comes to communication, probably if I need to put some words, is probably understand first, listen. First thing is listen, understand, and possibly what I will then basically then tell them that well, then you start communicate using the tools of communication. So because when you start to listen and to try to understand the way expression, basically the way they communicate, their own communication, and actually then you use communication, then you can start to consider, is someone more visual, is someone more elaborate, someone can express himself better, someone talking in a jargon or use a dialect, use a slang. So that's absolutely, just get back to get in sync. All right.
So do you ask them then, Raf, how they prefer to receive information, or how do you gauge their communication preference?
Yeah. Then what I get, once you get in sync, they agree with a plan, all right, and a communication plan. Okay. sometimes it has to be quite explicit in a way you do that. Sometimes it's just like it comes more naturally, but it's important that usually establish the beginning. Right?
Yeah.
So what you see, basically, I would say, for instance, I say, get in sync means, I tell you that basically that you don't know them. They'll say, well, I don't know. Need to ask you just because I need to know you, and I need to know you. Or to say better is, I haven't got a clue. I want to help you, but it's another way. The way I think is the way it can suit you to you best. So you just have to forgive me for me to listen and just get information before I go. Right. So so once you learn over the years that the worst thing you can do, it just someone comes back in and you give a protocol, a set protocol, you do this or else, and off you go. That's it. That is the end. That's the end of the matter, because actually any athlete he doesn't expect to be treated like that. Right. Okay, he just produce the best, most performing athletes are used. First of all, they work as a team, and they used to work in an individualized way, and so they expect to be treated as an individual. Yeah. Right? So as a result, that communication comes back into the bigger picture, all right, and agree with them a communication, shall we say,
approach or style.
Yeah, approach or style or modus, shall we say, or just a fashion or style. But then what happened is that also to agree different communication, with other members of the team. And then now we open another door about the team.
Yeah,
sure. Or actually,
I want to get to that point about communication between the athlete and different stakeholders. But to your third point about communication using their tools, just to clarify that point, are you referring to communicating with the athlete in a way that sort of they understand, or like sort of referencing, a sport mindset where you're talking about things like goal setting, or progressions?
Yeah, basically tools. So actually, first of all, is the type of communication. Right? So is visual, or actually is more verbal, no verbal, is through try and error, right? Mm-hmm. So some athletes, they say, just tell me what to do, and then we get off from there. Say don't speak too much, really, because they love doing it. So they love to try and error because it's a coaching. They love the coaching thing, all right, and then because also they love to coach themselves in their way. So they like to try and error, try and do it again and tweak and be around. So basically a bit of coaching style. So which they do try, a bit of demo, a bit of try or error coaching, right? That's is very practical, is not verbal, is very physical. Someone's got more visual, so actually say, what do you mean? What are you asking? Yeah, in this coaching aspect, basically someone is more verbal, so you explain words. Some basically mass majority love visual, so just arrows and just get a whiteboard and second. That's why it's time to be quite visual with them. This is quite effective. They like it, especially these days with millennials. They love with it basically with a lot of apps. Everything, all the communication now becomes lots of, because they learn visually rather than verbally. Verbally is still there. It's fine. Is reinforcing the concept. So that's the tools. The second point is the language. All right. So we say, just to use the slang, is just some keywords, or someone wants to be details, it has to be longer or short. All right. So basically the attention details, or just to be more generous in terms of words or less. The other tools is about how self-management is led. So self-management versus basically a led session, right? So basically they want to have a communication where then at some point the session is mainly self-led, and I'm happy for patient wants. That's why I love that, because I want to be in control. So they regain control. I give a lot of variations, and I give them free rides and game on. So they experiment with different things at some point, just to boost their confidence. Or with a led session, which is mainly what we call a closed session. Some they call it in rehabilitation, which you have a specific set of program that needs to be done, just to build up strength or build up capacity or build up endurance, which is fine.
Yeah.
But yes, or some led session in terms of I want to get to a specific task to be completed today, and so I led the session. Fine, fair enough. But everything is not uncharted territory. Is a free game.
Yeah. So
And
there's communication about, you know, specific sessions and whether they're going to be more sort of self-managed, or whether, you know, you give the athlete different choices and then they're going and kind of doing them on their own, or whether it's more kind of dictated.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you also mentioned that some athletes seem to have a preference where they kind of willingly indicate that they prefer to be led by you, sort of like the coach, where you're indicating or telling them, okay, here's what I want you to do, and they kind of put themselves in your hands, so to speak. Would that be right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And this aspect is, in terms of communication, the tools, well, underpinning this is just you create the tools of find the type of communication, find a way to build rapport. Anything that creates rapport, because otherwise it's communication. It's super dry. You don't create rapport. So rapport or relationship, because then that's what we say. Communication using their tools enable build up rapport. If you don't have build up rapport, you don't create basically confidence in a practitioner, on all practitioners, or in the team. So and this is important. And once you establish communication, there's confidence. Possibly the rapport is very individual, so you can use different communication of different individuals, all right? Because you can be more regarded, less regarded. So the way you talk to a psychologist is different from a S&C to a coach or anything else. Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I know I state the obvious here probably, but the communication using their tools is applied to my area, really. Right. Then there's some crossover, but actually, yeah, that's what we suggest.
Right. So I was going to ask about, and you touched on this a bit, how you build rapport with your athletes and your patients.
Okay, so I think the best way to build a rapport, as I said before, which is communication is one way, is to listen to them. So basically clarify that you know stuff, you know stuff, but it is basically is how the stuff applies to them.
Right. So
all right. So simple as that. So to build that rapport, I'll build that rapport and say, especially the first session, and say, listen to them, clarify that, basically I got experience, that's my passion. But if I don't listen to you, basically to build that rapport, it's just to listen to you and just to gradually apply what I think that identify important to you,
Sure.
to your rehabilitation, and build up a bit of confidence. So in other some tools to build our rapport. So actually some plans or strategies. So I would say keep it brief, keep it concise, to the point, relevant to them, to their problem, in order of priority.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and the key thing I know is sometimes it's just like too small. I say what I mean. Keep it concise. 3 points of things. All right. So every session is about 3 points, no more. Could be 1 point, 3 points, one for the point. And you can every now and then you can get the overall picture, but the overall picture you don't have to do every single time. Right. So as I said before, so we got the plan. So that's the week, number 2, number 3, number 4. Say that's the plan, fine. Let's talk about 1 week at a time. We need to work on 2 things this week. All right. And we repeat that 3 things. Right. Simple. To the point, relevant to the problem, in order priority according to what they want to achieve. And sometimes what they want to achieve is here. But I say, well, in order to get there, I need to build up here, and then we'll build up here, and we'll build up here, and we just do three things.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you get, when they get kind of very clear, precise information, it shows what you're talking about, or you're a competent practitioner. And when you give them just a few, no more than 3 kind of take-home messages, then they understand what they need to do. So it's not too much information, but also that point, I guess, about how you apply your knowledge to their problem specifically helps build that trust or the rapport with the patient. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the key thing, because it just is a ongoing, evolving rapport. So the other thing, and it's important to say that in order just to help them what they're looking for, to achieve what they're looking for, what from the small things to the big things, they need to see that once you set up the specific points and they achieve that, they know there's no coming back. It makes sense to them. They achieve, they see that, okay, this works. So it has to be effective.
Right.
If it's not effective, you have to be the first one to say, honestly, I haven't got a clue. Let's reset up again. All right. So, or we just seek help if needed. So this is the other point of the report. Listen to them, clarify, know stuff, but also be, the other thing about here is be absolutely honest. Okay. So what you mean is that what you're confident, what the things you're less confident, and things you are less confident.
Right.
Okay, so I would say that I've done this before. Yes, I'm pretty much sure, without over delivering. You say, well, I think we will be able to work on this and this and this until that point. From that point, I need some help because actually I've never done this with this particular situation.
Yeah.
So
Would you say that takes confidence in your skills as a practitioner to be honest about what you know and what you don't know?
So let's put it this way: it could be confident because you got previous experience, or less confident because you now have previous experience with a similar situation.
Right.
Okay, and so you can obviously take a little bit of a guess, but usually is about we need to be honest and upfront, not to overstate and under-deliver. Basically, be cautious and explain that always. It's not that you want to say to cover things up if you're not capable to deliver or to lead them. So the worst thing, because that's will lead to the end of the report. So you have to be quite honest to say, I can help you with this, or I cannot help you with this.
Right.
And someone else is more specialized than me in this area, or I can help you with until this particular phase. which doesn't require any particular area or expertise. But then in the meantime, we activate reaction to find a specialist for this particular phase.
Right.
And you have to be quite clear on that.
It also sounds like when the athlete has success engaging in the recommended skills or exercises or rehabilitation, what you're recommending, that then builds their confidence, but also has implications for rapport and trust. Is that right?
Yeah, it's absolutely right. So it's more about sometimes is what I tend to also to in order just to build up a proper rapport, I would suggest is the fact that you have to clarify. I would say for them is that you lead to a certain point. You say, I can't do stuff for you. I give you guidance, but you have to put the hard work because so it's not that I do the stuff for you and just to make your life easier for you. So for me, I'm a facilitator of the process. I want to solve problems, so just give you some solutions. So in other words, let's put it this way, which has been fantastic over time. Basically, I'm here because my expertise gives solutions, no problems. All right. So gives solution, no diagnosis. All right. So I say, what do you mean? Well, because if you label someone with a diagnosis, just an ACL is done. No, you're not ACL. It's just basically you are a recovering athlete. So I give you a solution, or a number of solutions, or a plan. And this is my area of expertise when you come up and say, let's build up rapport by creating practical solutions.
Right.
It's not you can ask for this and this and that. Well, that's your area of expertise comes from.
Yeah.
And there's a strategy that is feasible. The other thing to create, again, rapport is empowering or just motivate them by by empowering them to explore a way that they feel like making progress rather than being led completely, right? So this is the area that when they are in uncharted territory, you have to lead the session, fair enough, straight on. But at the first opportunity, or the key points, the opportunity, you free them. As an athlete, you don't let completely from A to B the warm-up. The warm-up, they learn over the years that you can do modified warm-up, but largely you empower free practice.
Right.
There you progress to a certain point, to the limit, to the edge, and then from there you let them in uncharted territory. That's great.
So is it important, Raf, that the athlete kind of sees themselves as the driver of their rehabilitation? That, they're like, is there some communication that ultimately the onus is on them to
absolutely.
control of their recovery?
Absolutely. So for control, right? So we're talking about, so you have different points. So is self-management is the key thing. Okay, that's what I say. Self-management, be proactive. Proactive means is that there's no passive treatments. You don't have a passive treatment. The passive treatment is just only for regeneration, for instance, but nothing else. Okay, so just only is a specific reason. So the control is that the patient, basically, they know what they're given programs to manage themselves. Okay, so and then you give some rules, right? By rules, so you give rules, but basically also you give rules of free practice. Okay, so you can juggle the plan for the week. Okay, That is the different thing. So
Right.
it's important that you just give some rules. So say, for instance, the managed by cells say, okay, you can move this session up and down. I don't care. Fine, whenever it suits you best, you feel nice and fed and rest, just go for it. But we need to do this program, for instance, every second day or third day, otherwise, blah, blah, blah. So I just give this some management and control. The other thing is about also discipline. Okay, you talk about like an athlete. So an athlete turn up and a training, turn up a training, turn up a rehab session, you turn up a rehab session. There's no absolutely different. Okay, so they keep themselves in control, and so the worst thing you can do is just overtaking the lead, take over the lead, and then then you take off the control of them, and actually what they nobody likes them.
Yeah.
So it's not gonna happen.
So in terms of self-management and discipline, maybe you can highlight or just discuss the role of motivation in athlete recovery.
Yeah, so in this case, so I would say the motivation is how to set up the motivation. Well, the motivation is the fact that you reinforce the message that they are creating their own, basically creating their own destiny. So, and then the achievers. So basically reinforce at the end of a session. So for instance, towards the end of a lead reinforcement during lead sessions. Okay. So you just recreate, you lead a session, achieve a task, basically reinforce that. You see, that's what you're able to achieve. You did it, I didn't do it. All right. So you can create change. All right. And you create change at your will. All right. So you're empowering them by using the self-management, as we call, basically is a self-led spiral or checklist spiral, right? Self-led checklist spiral. What do you mean? What this concept is about? Sorry, I would like to use some different colors, but I can't. What the self-led spiral is. So when you start to warm up, you start to do your floor work. Then you do drills. Then you do technical drills. Then you work with the ball. Then you sprint. Then you jump. Then you're ready to play. Right? So you got different levels of check in which basically patient is just be able to start his in warm up and just to check every single aspect of what he's able to do, and this reinforce his ability to be capable, to accomplish, to be successful, and be ready now to train or to compete. So you use the same. Hope it makes sense.
Yeah, sure. So like you use kind of the same training principles as when they're uninjured in the rehab, and it sounds like when they can see that their actions that they have responsibility or control over result in a desired change, it sounds like that then has positive motivational implications.
Yeah, so usually you have the principle and modified principles of ramp, the ramp principle during warm up. Okay, so basically that you range of motion, activation, mobility, and power, right? So basically the same principle warm up, but apply to this particular aspect. Okay, so you build up.
Right.
So, and it's great because they just create a self-initiated and internal spiral of motivation that is now externally dependent or externally focused. All right, the onus is internally nourished or initiated. So, and I love that because then creates independence and independence. All right. Hope
So
it makes sense.
again, sort of that, that your point about creating change at will, or again, when they sort of see themselves as the drivers of their behavior and that their actions make a difference, and they observe that, or they see that through
Yeah,
their performance, that again has sort of positive implications for their self-management moving forward, or their motivation to continue.
exactly. Absolutely.
Um, and you've talked, it seems we come back to this issue of control. And I just wonder, what are some things, I guess, that maybe the athlete feels are out of their control when they become injured, or in what way do they lose a sense of control when injured?
Well, I would say that the different types, so they control. So they lose control of identity, no longer be a full training athlete, control of their daily routine, life in a way, right?
Mhm.
No ability to control their independence, physical, not only, but then they lose the control in terms of role in society, or role as a family, also role as in a club, so social role. All right. So there's a lot of lost control, right? And so as a result, you have the different. If you need to, I probably know really the onion. Okay. So you got the individual as busy as an athlete, as a club, as a society,
Right,
family, society, and general, right? So
right,
it just so level, right? Then sometimes is more the core for them is just their identity, so where they are. So unfortunately, this is the lost control is multifaceted, and as a result, if I need to add now straight away, this comes back to the other key points I want to say to get. It just requires that a team effort to address this loss of control.
right. And you
Okay.
mentioned before that communication between the different individuals within that team.
Yeah.
Are there things that, in your experience, are important for the athlete that facilitate communication for the athlete with other team members?
Yeah. So I think that is related to. I think that is has to be probably a team lead or a team liaison. So I would say liaison communication, because the team. What is the team? The team is the practitioners, the family, the club, society. Sorry, the coach. So basically, the staff. Okay, but then you have, yeah. So you have a number of practitioners that the team as effort is involved, right? So it's absolutely crucial to create a little bit. Well, it's a consistent communication, because most of the time uh, we don't speak to family, we don't speak to club, we only think about just only about the science of the medicine side of it,
Mhm.
or there's some representative of the coach and all the stuff. And I think it's a team effort.
Where is
um,
the athlete in the team, would you say? Are they like at the center of it? Are they peripheral to it?
no, they are the center, right? So we just basically, well, probably we can just do the graphs there, but probably athlete, team lead, sorry, just team, and basically the team is athlete centered.
Mhm.
Okay, right. Athlete center team. Okay, you're basically a team lead that actually keep everyone in communication with each other, or just organize the meeting together, or yeah, the crucial points where we are, and the follow up and the review, establish a little bit, yeah, the the rules are how we operate as a team. And because we recognize that in order just to be highly effective with the with the recovery, a team effort is needed.
Right.
Okay.
So in this athlete-centered team, does that mean that the athlete is involved in all discussions within that team, or that they're the ones?
No, athlete uh, is involved, but not all the time. So actually, there's some that depends on communication that needs to be done as a team without the athlete, and then with the athlete. Okay, right. So ultimately, the athlete is the ultimate point in which express his wishes and the expectations. At the same time, then you have the team lead or the other practitioners that have to abide by the rules of safe practice, duty of care, and the other things that we know very well. But at the same time, everyone wants to be successful, right? For the athlete to be successful, right? So there will be some communications in between without the team and without the athlete, without the family. And
so, within this kind of team approach, you're alluding to the idea of support, and I wonder specifically what types of social support does the injured athlete need or require to effectively recover?
Well, I think that the first of all, psychosocial support probably is one of the key points to start with, because as I said before, is emotional well-being is one of the key things to look after. Psychological, call it well-being, but basically, yes. So emotional well-being is the key thing. So by different strategies to explain where we are, where we're going, and how does it feel, and how he sees himself. So in terms of the psychosocial well-being, probably is the key thing, and it's ongoing process because there will be challenges. Okay, so we're just discussing how important is the aspects of the social support. All right, so we just as I said, that is throughout the recovery, you have to solve different challenges at the very beginning, and then you just progress, and then you go setbacks, and then you progress, and then you have different setbacks as well. This continues, but also because of the length of time. Basically, this is time, and this is the different phases. So you have the different phases of return. Basically, the key input of social support is absolutely crucial. Okay.
So would you say the types of support needed depend on the phase? So like maybe early they need, I don't know, like just someone to listen to them, or sort of emotional support, or
especially at the beginning, because you have loss of control, right? So loss of control, full black picture. Okay. Yeah. So you have the full black picture in which you know what the future entails, and as a result, it's just a matter of being able to go up. No, you're basically amount of fear and stress and fear for the future, right? So if I have to speculate on that aspect, this is probably one of the crucial parts of the process. Okay. Then, as you progress, what happens is that there's ongoing rapport, in which then there's a second external source of stress, shall we say, as a number two, if I need to do it. It basically is the length of time demanding, shall we say, physical, or basically building up athletes' physical resilience. if I have to say. So the way that we discuss that, and so at different points, the different opportunities throughout the phases, as we depicted here in the graph, which tells you that it will be different moments to build up resilience, especially through failure, to hard times, but also physical resilience because it takes time. So times creates stress because it's ongoing. So it creates expectation that one day you wake up in the morning, everything is gone. Yes, it will happen, but it's a long process, because it takes more phases.
Right. So it sounds like, just in terms of support, there's a need to help athletes manage the time, or, you said particularly for a longer injury, maybe it gets particularly hard over the course of, an 8 or 9 month ACL rehabilitation. And so maybe just the support as well. How do you manage that time that can seem really long throughout the recovery?
So as a result, what I meant, is what the Buddhists, they used to call the peace of mind. So you have a steady state in which you're in, because of the long time it takes to produce changes, and it's important just to build up confidence and shall we say ability to cope with negative thoughts, okay, or bad days, or I would say setbacks.
Right.
Okay, so that's absolutely crucial about building up resilience. And let's come back to what we discussed before: have a plan for a bad day.
Right.
Okay, from a psychosocial perspective, from a generation, from mind-going. So, in terms of negative thoughts, expect that, as I said before, these graphs depicts not only the performance in terms of physical performance. We talk about physical state. So you have a setback, you got negative thoughts. So set up a plan and appoint a practitioner able to give the tools to deal with it.
Yeah. In terms of that point about confidence or coping with negative thoughts, I'm wondering, as athletes get closer to the point where they're ready to resume competitive activities or to get back to their first competition, is that an issue, confidence, or do they start to maybe have more negative thoughts as that time period, or as they get closer to the return to sport?
Absolutely. So this is the situation as I put in here, all right? So we can just put about competition time. It's just because what happened is that it's a novel situation where, can you hear me? Right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
With a situation where they're being, so we say that they know what to expect, okay, because they know what the competition entails, but because they haven't been there in that state before, there's a lot of doubts, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically because it's not internally driven, and it's not that you're confident because you have been there, you have the experience, and you know how to deal. Probably you have, but you know what the expect, you know what the competition is like. So there's a bit of debate between the internal drive compared to the external drive, okay. So probably that aspect in the psychosocial, one of key points is to focus on the internal drive rather than external drive. So it means that, that is, you don't have to care what the competition outcome will be. Competition is part of the process, part of practice. Is don't focus about the outcome. Or at beginning, you have to select a competition in which the outcome is not relevant. Okay, shall we say? So to a certain point. At some point, it's just like competition practice. This is one of the strategy. And at some point, it also just to prepare the athlete. One of the strategies is that you prepare to take a risk of failure and accept that failure is part of the sport.
Right.
And even just you don't achieve what you expect to do in competition, again, is not indifferent from what you were doing beforehand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in competition, never be successful 100% all the
Right.
time. You
So,
build up.
and you're suggesting, particularly after a rehabilitation, when they haven't performed for a while, that the focus should be less on the outcome or the quality of their performance in that competition and other things, I guess.
More on the process, right? On the process, the way you felt, okay? The way you felt it during, before, and after, so that you can just work on on strategies to deal with that type of feelings if they are somehow impairing performance, okay? Feelings or thoughts, or if they are positive, they are extremely negative, or they are in between, or is a fact. So it's a different aspect.
Right.
So I think is important of the process. All right. Sometimes it's a mix between a due diligence of the process that we tick all the boxes, we're good. But most of the time is about how you felt, and be open about it, express yourself, and what was the process of decision making or anything else, and to which extent the emotions were taking part of it, or actually not to use to think in a competition mode that needs to be training, right?
Yeah.
So the different aspects that are really relevant to that particular situation.
So in terms of your point about ticking all the boxes, I guess before the athlete actually returns to competition, let's say they're trying to get back for a certain competition, how is it decided that they're ready to in fact compete again?
Okay, so I would suggest that let's clear a bit of everything if we can. Right. So I check now. So I would suggest that different things. Can you see me now?
Yeah.
Just to share that. Right, different things. Still, we can use the whiteboard for a second if we can. Usually the competition, the fit to compete there's a process. We basically, I don't want to be too academic. I think is ultimately the fitness competition has to be clear by medical, by strength and conditioning and fitness, or athletic trainer, and by the coach in terms of technical and tactical aspects, or coach or coaching staff. Mm-hmm. And then overall, in terms of, usually is a performance director or performance lead or performance leader that puts everything together, and also value the human factor if someone is ready or not. And then basically from the performance lead, I include, or I put together also the sort of psychologist. Okay. Right. So you have the medical, there's typical tenets. So you got the physical aspect, it's fine. There you have the technical and tactical, but then you have the performance assessment, right? Which is basically performance lead, performance aspect, which includes, I put there, if you're just a psychologically performing, all right? I put it there. It's not about the technical aspect. This is just the ticking boxes, medical, physical, technical, tactical is the given, right? Don't have anything think about. It's about performing, and the psychology can advise the performance leader and the other performance team where we at, where if is what is possible, what's likely to happen, less likely to happen, if the athlete is ready, is not ready, the strength area, the weaknesses.
Right.
That's something that is being formed, is working on it, and what the expectations of their performance is.
So
Okay.
is the performance aspects or the psychological aspect, is that determined by things like what the athlete says or the input that the athlete provides, or is it also a matter of observations about their performance, like, oh, the athlete looks really good
Yeah.
when they're
So
performing?
I think it's a mix of the psychological here, the actually profile, because basically is in the competition, the absolutely confidence to win and confidence to be competitive, shall we say, is the key thing. All right. So someone doesn't have to be in the back of a mind that I'm not fit enough or not medically enough. Oh yes, it could be in the back of a mind, but it's very minor. And is the dominant is the confidence and the ability to be there to perform, not to take part. Right. So and that is a process that is a mix of between observation, fine, but then open discussion with the athlete. Okay, and then you have a little bit of come up with a strategy and a plan, and a bit of feedback after that. Basically, that may include competition practice, right? So let's say just like a low-level meeting or even a high-level meeting, you can basically afford to failure because of the sponsors are not involved and etc. So that's what I'm thinking about competition practice. It's just a bit of a process in which the other ones, the fit to compete, are still involved to enable to you to have exposure into performance and to be able to practice or to identify the areas that needs to be worked on in terms of competition.
Yeah. So would it be fair to say that sort of decisions about readiness to resume are multifaceted, and there's consideration of different elements of the performance?
Yeah, I would say it's multi-level and multifaceted. Okay. So level, because it's not necessarily someone could be physically super fit, even just tactical. It just absolutely is a ball skills are fantastic, like juggling or passing, but it's not really. It's nothing to do with that. It's just basically to able able to perform to the level that is good for him to have enjoyment that is in the mix and is able. It's not hanging on. Right. So that's why I say the competition practice can be a mock competition or could be a lesser league of competition or anything else that it gives time for the athlete to go through the process as a team, not to live by himself, and with a plan.
And I think you were alluding to this idea that, it's somewhat normal for the athlete somewhere in their mind, maybe in the back of their mind, to have some apprehension or doubt, but it's important that they have confidence, or overall that they're sort of more confident than apprehensive. Would that be an accurate characterization?
Absolutely. So I would suggest that one thing from there. Okay, so I would suggest that apprehension, and if it's just an apprehension, it comes from the unknown and the novel situation. And I think that is something to remind the athlete that apprehension is normal.
Yeah.
All right. Is normal. Is understandable. So I would say is a part and parcel of be able to compete in sport, because you just you put yourself up there on the line and see what happens. All right. So you can understand that if someone is fully confident with no apprehension, it means that he's not competing. He's doing some training. Right. So it's a part and parcel of being in a competition.
Right.
Secondly, beef is not a fear. There's a different type of fear. Fear because actually I'm not confident in myself, and I feel I shouldn't belong there. It's not the right time yet.
Yeah.
or is a fear because I respect the risk of being in that particular sport, or because of a risk associated with competition and a risk associated with failure.
Okay.
I think that is the area that we can probably support the athlete, uh, not necessarily not dismissing at all, basically acknowledging that apprehension is normal. Is that the degree this apprehension is from lack or basically awareness that you're not ready yet? In that case, you go back, go
Yeah.
into training, do your practice, it's absolutely fine. Or basically apprehension because you absolutely self-confidence, but is externally lossy, basically a locus is from external, which
Right.
is in that case it start to get closer to a normal situation.
Right. So would you say then that the degree of apprehension then informs the decision about whether the athlete returns or not? So that if they're, as you say, kind of they have an
Yeah,
understandable level of apprehension, that's normal, that's part of competition, or the fact they haven't tested their skills. But if
yeah.
it's an intenser fear about, well, I'm not sure I'm ready to remain healthy or to compete at a high level, does that then influence decisions about whether the athlete returns
Yeah,
or not?
absolutely. So I think that actually, um, if apprehension is externally driven, but the athlete is internally, shall we say, sound and solid,
Hmm.
I think that is not a major area of concern. All right. If the athlete instead is internally, is this apprehension internally driven, patient is not ready, doesn't feel ready at all, I think there's no point of forcing him to do a competition, or at least establish what are the specifics aspect of the competition, or at least basically it need to have the full consent from the athlete to do it. At the end of the day, it's his life, it's his sport, it's not ours. All right. So the outcome, we want to have the best outcome, but it's not that you put an athlete that doesn't feel ready, uh, you make him a favor. There's a
Yeah,
risk of further repercussion of his mental health.
sure.
So this is a line that has to be drawn straight away,
Right.
right? So and himself is athlete decision only, and so he's absolutely adamant to do that.
Yeah.
And
So when you say if the apprehension is externally driven, do you mean that if they're, concerned about things like their
yeah, so
competition or
yeah, exactly. It's about the competitors, uh, or uh, the field of play, terrain, which is basically challenging for me because I never skied or skate on that particular type of field. Yeah, that's kind of thing. It's just like you have a BMX rider, there's a big jumps compared to a small jumps, or because for a competition I need to do a triple axel as an athlete instead of do a single. So that level competition, basically, that's the apprehension. Yes, I need to perform at a certain level, otherwise I can't go through
yeah,
because the type of terrain or the type of the squad that they asked me to do.
right.
Yeah. So
And so
that's
is
where it's
there
the area that you don't have control necessarily.
right. And
And yeah,
that apprehension is okay, is that right?
I
Whereas if
think it's okay in terms of as long as the athlete is capable or is tried it before and is aware what he's facing,
yeah,
but is internally confident that is not to do with himself. It's basically what is up there, and this is challenging.
yeah,
The only thing is probably is that is matching current form, right? And let's come back into the other question. If I say his current form or level of performance is still matching where he's at, there you go, the answer. So it's more important sometimes to address this openly with the athletes to understand where it's coming from.
right. My last question for you, Rafe, is if you could share one piece of advice for injured athletes, what would it be?
Okay, right. So I would suggest three things here, and then we finish just there. Otherwise, I just try to practice what I preach. Three things. Face reality, know the situation. The situation. Um, build a team around you. Build a team. One piece of advice just basically means build a team you can trust fully. And three, have peace of mind. Peace of mind and of mind. Yeah. Simple as that. I think it's a great thing. I know it's very, sometimes it's quite holistic, but face reality is not what we're facing here, right? Without any particular lie or just like adulteration, because it's better, right?
Yeah.
Then you build a team around it that you can trust fully with what we have needs to be done, because it's important to build a team around you. And peace of mind means, because it takes a long time, and call it peace of mind means a resilient mind, right? A mind that actually, peace of mind means it's not the happiness, it's just a resilient that you're able to bounce back, because actually the setbacks will happen, is part of the process.
Yeah.
And the build up over extended period of time.
Yeah. Those are great insights, Raf, and you've shared so much information that I know is going to be valuable for injured athletes. And yeah, I just really appreciate. I can see that your skills as a teacher come into play as you're interacting with the athletes, and just how you diagram things and write things down. And I'm sure that's part of what makes you such an effective practitioner. So again, I really value all your insights, and thank you so much for taking the time to meet with
Oh,
me.
well, I really appreciate the chat. Has been fantastic. I think I learned much more from your skills to eviscerate from my thoughts what you after. Really enjoy it. I've been doing this for a while, so I'm really looking forward to continue into the path of helping athletes and work as a team, and especially understand how the role of source psychology is gelling fantastically with practitioners, athletes, and everybody's involved in the journey.
Yeah, well, I think there's, we kind of work at the intersection of different fields that, that, as you mentioned numerous times, the expertise of different individuals hopefully comes to bear in helping the athlete recover effectively, and yeah, and have the peace of mind that things will work out well. So thank you
Fantastic.
again.
Thank you, Les, and all the best. Let's keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.